Hello, this is Angela from Natural Living Alchemy. Welcome to my channel. In today's video, we are going to be making a chocolate sourdough bread with an optional Dubai chocolate spread, just because we like to be fancy around here. Now, this spread can be used as an inclusion, but it does tend to get a little bit messy, but it does look really pretty. So it's depending on what you're wanting to do. Now, this recipe will make one standard size loaf of bread if you're wanting to just make one. But what I'm going to do, because I'm planning on giving them away as gifts, I'm going to be making two smaller bowls. So whatever you want to do, if you want to make one big one or if you want to make a couple small ones, perfectly fine. Let's just jump right in and talk about our spread or our filling, depending on how you're planning on using it. So these are all of the ingredients you're going to require, and these are the measurements that you're going to need. Now, our pastry, you can find this at your local halal grocery store. Now, I've had good luck at finding them at some of the larger grocery stores, especially the ones that have the freezer section, because this is generally found right beside their other frozen pastries. And the other thing that I want to talk about is this is the brand of spread that I've used. Now, this one actually came from Costco, but I've purchased it in a smaller jar at that same store that I got my pastry from. If you are using a different spread than this brand, you might have to adjust some of your ingredients a little bit. Now, when I made it with a different one, I actually didn't have to add any white chocolate. This one, I find that little bit of white chocolate makes it that much better. So the recipe calls for unsalted butter. Today, I only have salted butter because there was no unsalted left at the store. So I'm just going to omit the pinch of salt until after I taste it, because I don't think that it's actually going to require it. Now, if you were wanting to add some color, if you were wanting to make the spread a little bit more vibrant of a color, you definitely could. You just want to make sure that you are using oil-based food colorings if you're choosing to do that. So to prepare the spread or the filling, depending how you're going to use it, you're going to take a large skillet and you're going to melt your butter. And then you're going to toast your pastry until it is a nice and golden brown color. Once the desired color has been reached, just add in those remaining ingredients and stir thoroughly. Be sure to just taste it and see if you like all the flavors. If you need to add a little bit more of something, do so at this point. And then you're just going to allow it to cool completely before using it. One last thing that I do want to mention before I forget about our pastry. Try to see if you can source it locally before you're going to order it online. Locally, a pound, this cost me $4.99. When I was looking on Amazon just to see what was out there, the prices were 3 to 4 times more, and you were just getting a subpar product in my opinion. Before we mix up our bread, I just want to invite you to check out the description box below this video. In there, you're going to find a link to the full written blog article that does accompany this video. So the equipment that you are going to require would be your general things that you're going to make for sourdough. So we're going to need a mixing jar, some mixing bowls, spatulas, Danish whisks, some bannetons, a dough sling or parchment paper, a Dutch oven, and a bread long. All right, so let's mix up our levain and get started. So either the night before or about 12 hours before you want to bake, it's time to make your levain. So we're going to start by putting our mixing jar on our scale. Turn our scale on, make sure that we are on grams, and we are going to be using Jane. Now, Jane is the sourdough starter that I'm going to be creating with you guys. Actually, I believe at the end of this month is when she's scheduled. So into your jar, you're going to place 20 grams of sourdough starter. Then you want to hit tare on your scale, zero it out, and to that, we are going to add 60 grams of our bread flour, hitting tare on your scale, you're then going to add 60 grams of water. And then once everything's in the jar, just mix it until everything is thoroughly combined. Once everything is all nicely mixed in, I like to put an elastic band around just so I can see the level of our levain. We are wanting it to expand 2 to 3 times. Like I said, this is going to take about 10 to 12 hours. So I will see you in the morning when it is time to bake this into some chocolate sourdough bread. All right, so what we are going to do is put our bowl on top of our scale, turn our scale on, and the first step is we need to bloom our cocoa powder. So what we're going to do is put our cocoa powder in our bowl, hitting tare, then you're going to add 100 grams of just boiled water over top. Okay, once you have your water in, you're just going to take your whisk and you're going to mix these until they are smooth and combined. Perfect. Then you're going to throw it back onto the scale, hit 0, and we are then going to add in our cold water. And we will need 250 grams. Then we are going to add our sugar, the salt, our vanilla, which is going to be coming in at 6 grams, next you're going to add in all of your flour. And then on top of all of that, we are going to add our levain, and we are going to require 120 grams, and that just goes right over top. And then you're just going to take your whisk and you're going to start mixing everything in together. Once it's a shaggy consistency, we're going to then move on to our hands and just work everything in. Once we're at about this consistency, take your bowl scraper, just scrape down the sides of the bowl just to make sure all of that flour is going to be incorporated. Okay, so once we are incorporated, we got all of our loose stuff off of the sides of the bowl. This is completely optional, but what I like to do at this point and then once it's just on the counter, I like to just kind of work it in on the counter. You can do this in the bowl, I just find it a little bit easier. And we're actually just going to start working it until this is coming together even more. Okay, so once you get it fairly worked in and incorporated, that took me about 7 minutes of just kind of kneading it and then slapping and folding it until we got to this point. So what we're going to do now is you're just going to put your cover over top and we are going to allow this to sit for 10 minutes and then you're going to start your stretch and folds. Okay, so it's been 10 minutes and we're going to do our first set of stretch and folds. So what I like to do is grab my bowl scraper and just a little bowl of water. So we're going to start by loosening the dough from the sides of the bowl. Start it just directly across from you. Take some water on the hands, and you're going to stretch and fold. You're going to do a quarter turn, scrape the dough off the sides of the bowl, wet your hand again, and then just stretch and fold it over. So once you have done four around the whole circle, four around the whole bowl, one at every quarter turn, then you're just going to put your lid on, and you're going to come back and do this in 20 minutes until you've completed 6 sets of stretch and folds. If you are using your baker's notes, just be sure to write down what time you're doing these stretch and folds at so that you do not lose track. Remember, you can grab a copy of those baker's notes in the description box below this video. It's now time to do our final set of our stretch and folds. Now set number 5 and now number 6. Instead of doing our stretch and folds, what I've actually been doing is something called coil folds. And that's just because our dough is seeming very strong. And that's because of all of the work I did in the beginning when I was mixing it up. So what we're going to do for our coil folds is you just want to loosen the dough from the side of the bowl. You're going to go underneath, and you're just going to allow both of the ends to go underneath each other. We'll do a quarter turn. We're going to lift it up, and then we're just going to allow each of the sides to just go underneath itself. And we will do 4 of those. Okay, now I'm just going to move some of my stuff out of the way. So now what we're going to do is we are going to allow our dough to finish its bulk fermentation. So I just wanted to take a little moment now to explain why my bowl is sitting on top of a towel. Well, this isn't something that I always do, but because I am filming this process today, I am wanting to speed it up slightly. And one way that we can do that is by placing it on something like a heating mat, or if you had like a proofing box, you could use that. But basically, I just have my seed germination mat, I have a towel sitting over top, and then my bowl. I don't want my bowl directly on the mat. That's going to potentially be too warm. I just want to add like a nice consistent heat to it to just help that bulk fermentation move itself along. This isn't something that is necessary, but I just don't want to be filming too late while I'm doing this video for you today. So a good thing to do at this point is to actually take the temperature of your dough and just see where it's at. And you also can periodically do this while it is sitting on the mat to make sure that things aren't getting too warm. So right now we're at 74 degrees. So that is an okay temperature. So I'm just going to write that on my notes just so that I have an idea. Now, we are going to allow this to continue bulk fermenting, and I will come back and I will show you different signs and signals that your dough is going to give you to tell you when it is done bulk fermentation. So I will see you in a couple hours and show you what our dough is looking like then. All right, so several hours has elapsed. Just for an idea, my bulk fermentation, I began the time at 7:45 this morning, and it is now 3:05 this afternoon. But this is what we've got. So, as you can see, she is fairly large in size. We can see that there is some bubbles on top. She's really jiggly and airy. If you look, oh, don't dump it out on you. But if you look, you can see kind of all these different fermentation bubbles on the side. if you do your little poke test, take a damp finger. We are going to push it in, and it does come back fairly quickly. Now, I have been pushing my bulk fermentation a little bit further than what I was beforehand, and I've definitely noticed an improvement in my loaves of bread. So don't be afraid to just push that bulk fermentation and just see how far it can go. Okay, so I'm just gonna move the stuff that we no longer require out of the way, and I will show you what we do next. So what we're gonna do first is we're just gonna take some flour and we're just going to sprinkle it on our working surface. And then we are going to dump out the contents of our bowl onto our floured surface. So I like to take our bowl scraper first and just loosen the dough from the sides of the bowl. But look at that huge bubble. I don't know, I like to pop them personally. Okay. Now, because I am planning on making this into 2 smaller loaves, what I'm going to do now is actually just cut the dough in half so I have my 2 separate loaves. If you make this as is, this makes one nice regular large-sized sourdough loaf. Like I said, I am wanting to make 2. So we are just going to eyeball it. And then I'm just going to take one of my pieces and just put it to the side. Now, I am wanting to put some chocolate chips in the middle of this dough. So what we are going to do is we are going to spread this out until it is a nice big rectangle, and then we are going to start adding our inclusions. Okay, so we're just going to start by stretching out our dough until it is a nice rectangle. Okay, and then once you have your rectangle shaped out, you're just going to grab some chocolate chips. Perfect. So then you're just going to take the one side, fold it over until it goes into the middle. And I like to just gently press it down. Same thing with the other side. Pull it out, fold it over till it is gently in the middle. And I like to just put some in the middle section here. Now, I did get my bannetons prepared. I just took my basket and I just lined it with a dish towel that I sprinkled some flour in. So those are all going to be ready. Here, we'll just put the one we're going to use right there. Okay, so back to our shaping. So once you have kind of this rectangle here, you're just going to take the sides, the end away from you, bend it towards you. So now you have something that looks like this, kind of like a little log here. So I do like to just lightly moisten my hands, and we're going to start shaping this into a ball. Perfect. just like that. Now we do want to pull slightly tight so that we do make sure that we have some surface tension here, but since we do have our inclusions, we don't want to pull it too tight that our inclusions start to poke through. So this is good. I'm just going to take my bench scraper, lift it up, and then just place it gently into my proofing basket. Now what I do like to do at this point is just see if there are any seams that need to be closed. Perfect. And then just a light dusting of flour over top. And then I just like to cover with the ends of my dish towel. And then this is going to get proofed in the refrigerator. All right, let's shape our next one. So just a sprinkling of flour. We are going to grab our other piece of dough and then just stretch it out into a rectangle. So now that we have our rectangle, I guess this is more of a square, then you're just going to sprinkle your chocolate chips inside. Grab one side, fold it over into the middle, gently press it down. Take your other side, fold it in, gently press it down. Take the side away from you, fold it over, and just keep pulling it over towards you. If any of your chocolate chips escape, just put them back in. If you do notice that the dough is sticking too much to your hand, just remember to dampen them with your water. Perfect, that looks good to me. Grab your bench scraper, pick up your bowl, and just place it in your proofing basket, and then just stitch together any seams that may be open, but this is looking pretty good. Little dusting of flour. And just cover it with your towel. So both of these will be put in the refrigerator to cold proof overnight, and I will see you in the morning when it is time to bake. Just remember, if you are using your baker's notes, just be sure to write down what time it was when you completed each step. But I'll see you in the morning when it's time to cook these babies. So our breads have been proofing in the refrigerator overnight. I've allowed my Dutch oven to heat up in my oven for, well, it's been in there for almost an hour at this point, so it is nice and warm. Let's get our loaf ready for the oven. So what we'll do is, if you have a bread sling, use it. I don't have this shape, so I'm going to be using parchment paper. I like to crumple up my parchment paper and then it doesn't start curling up when you put it down. I find it a little bit easier. So you're going to take your sourdough, put your parchment over top, flip it over. Perfect. So then we are just going to take our bread loam, and then I'm going to just make an X in this one. Now, if you wanted to sprinkle this with a little bit more flour, you could at this point. It does help the score stand out a little bit more. but I don't mind when it looks like this. I kind of prefer things to be a little bit more rustic than perfect, but that's what I prefer. Do whatever you prefer. Perfect. You just move this one out of the way. Now I only cook one of these at a time, so I will put that other one probably back in the refrigerator until it is time to bake. But let's just grab our Dutch oven out of the oven. Now, to set up my oven, what I did is I actually just put another cookie sheet on the very bottom rack, because I find sometimes the bottom of this bread gets a little bit more round than what I'm looking for. So by just putting a cookie sheet underneath, it helps diffuse that heat a little bit. So what you're going to do is open your Dutch oven away from you so that steam doesn't hit you in the face. You're then just going to grab your ice out of the freezer, put your sling in your Dutch oven, and then I like to use 2 ice cubes. That's going to help the crust to become crispy. So we're going to put this back into the oven and bake it covered for 20 minutes. Okay, so it's been 20 minutes. It's now time to take off our lid and see what we've got. Now, if you are using your baker's notes, definitely take note of the time. And it is 11:08. Perfect. So we are going to throw this back into the oven for another 5 to 10 minutes, just until the internal temperature is at 205 degrees. Okay, so we've been baking for 10 minutes and we are now, let's find a spot. Let's see. Perfect. We are at 205 degrees Fahrenheit, so that is perfect. So now what we're going to do is we are going to allow this loaf to cool completely, at least for 2 hours, before we are going to slice into it. So I'm not quite sure what happened with our ear here, but that's okay. I think she's looking pretty adorable. So we are just going to allow that to cool off. Sorry about that. I had somebody at my front door. So what we are going to do is we are going to, because I have that second one to bake, I'm just going to remove our paper. And then I'm going to put our lid back on our Dutch oven. And I'm going to put this back into the oven to heat up. And I do want both pieces to heat up nicely. So I'll probably leave it in there for about 20 minutes before I put our next loaf in. We have now reached the notes and substitutions or suggestions portion of this video. And I only have 2 things to share with you. So you might want to consider switching out the boiling water that we use to bloom our cocoa when we first mix up the bread. Change that out with hot coffee, and that would bring in more of a mocha type flavor. Now, I personally gave up coffee years ago. I can't stand the taste of it, but I am considering giving it a try and just seeing, because that does sound pretty tasty. Secondly, if you were wanting to make one of the coveted Dubai chocolate bars, this is the same filling recipe that I use. The only exception that I make is for this spread, I've halved the amount of the pastry and the butter that we needed to toast that pastry. Now, I find if you add the full amount of the pastry on this, it's almost too much, but that's my preference. But again, if you're wanting to make the chocolate bars, just use that exact same recipe that I used, except for double that amount of the pastry and the butter. So with that being said, if you already have a Dubai filling recipe that you like, use that one. one, but just use half the amount of pastry because then it'll give you a little bit of a better overall texture than if you just had the full amount of the pastry in. And one more thing, I know I said two, but I was lying. So pistachio spread is not the same thing as pistachio butter. Pistachio butter is just ground up pistachios. Pistachio spread, like the one I used, has some additional sugar already added into it. So there you have it. That is how easy it is to make your own sourdough bread that is nice and crispy and oh so delicious. So don't forget to hit the like button if you like this video and share it with anyone else who you think might enjoy it. Consider subscribing to the channel so that we can spend more time together and that you don't miss future videos. But I just want to say thanks for stopping by today, and I'll see you next time.